My name's David Wadsworth. I'm a sales rep here at Revelwood and joined by my colleague Haley Elliott, who will be showing you today's overview of adaptive planning here in a few moments. But just wanted to give you a few moments of what to expect today. And thanks again, everybody, for taking the time to join. But just some background on Revelwood. We're a platinum business partner of Workday. And what that means is that we're part of an extremely select group of partners that help you evaluate and implement adaptive planning. So we have over 25 years of experience and are made up of a diverse team of certified and experienced consultants that bring decades of financial operations and system know-how. And we've implemented over 150 adaptive customers over the past couple of years, and this continues to grow. But not only that, we also help existing adaptive customers with model enhancements, integration, support services, and one-on-one training. And I'm aware that some of you may be here today because you have an active initiative to get into a cloud FP&A solution. And some of you may just be here to learn or you're curious. Either way, we'd greatly appreciate you taking 15 minutes with us in the next few days just to have a quick chat, see what your current challenges are, and if you have any feedback on today's presentation and whether there are any resources that we can follow up with. And an important thing to note about today's demo is it's meant to really just give you a glimpse into what adaptive planning can do for the Office of Finance. We should be finished in about 45 minutes, but during that time, everyone's on mute. And if you have a question, there is the Q&A button at the bottom. Enter it there and we'll try to get to it. But if we don't get to it, we'll make sure to get back to you via email. Just wanted to take a moment, share a handful of the logos here that we've personally worked with at Revelwood to help implement and ensure a successful onboarding experience with adaptive planning. Adaptive planning is a place where you can do your modeling, reporting, analytics all in one place. So everything you need is in one solution and it'll act as your central source of truth, if you will. So typically we're talking with finance teams, and of course we're pulling in the general ledger data, but adaptive can connect to really any data source that you need it to, because at the end of the day, data is data, and you'll be able to bring all of that data together into one place to model and report on with confidence. And this slide here just gives you an idea of some of the areas of the business that you can model and plan using an adaptive, as it's not limited to the core FP&A. You can model out really any operational area of the business that you want with adaptive. Haley ensured to dive somewhat deeper into the demo today. However, feel free to ask in the Q&A questions or any topics you're interested in exploring, and we can be sure to schedule a more tailored demonstration on those capabilities at a later date. Now, Adaptive runs on Elastic Hypercube technology, which is a patented Workday technology and a true key competitive differentiator. There's a couple of different types of solutions in the market. You have the Excel add-on solutions that have all the same problems of Excel. Too many members in the dimensions, accounts skew, job titles. It's going to lock up Excel, and Excel can't calculate just what it needs. It has to calculate every sheet, save it all to disk. So if your Excel add-ons are locking up now, your Excel add-ons are lock on for all the same reasons. And then you have your traditional cube databases. The image here on the left is a graphical representation of the database. Traditional cube databases have to save every intersection of every dimension. So you see all that white space, it's all a bunch of zeros, but you have to save that all to disk. And what our proprietary database does is save only the valid data intersections. And it's also intelligent. So when you change something, it doesn't have to save all. Rather, it calculates only what it needs to. And that's why it's so fast. So where one of these cube-based systems will tell you to keep the number of dimensions down, or it'll break, or it'll get too slow, they'll break the database up into multiple cubes that must be batch updated, and it loses detail every time you move. But because of this technology, we'll have clients with 200 dimensions, hundreds of versions, and it has minimal impact on the performance. But the reason it's key is because it makes our solutions scalable and able to have an unlimited number of dimensions and version scenarios, as you'll see in Haley's demonstration today. And when your system needs more processing power, the system's intelligent and expands and gives it to you. But what's equally important is that you have this power without losing the ease of use and maintainability. And as you'll see again in the demo, everything's extremely intuitive with that drag and drop functionality so that the end users can own this system without assistance from IT. And that's why Adaptive has almost 6,000 customers globally across all industries. And that's way more than any of our competitors in the FP&A space. And did you know Adaptive has a 95% gross retention rate? It speaks value to what customers are getting out of Adaptive across all different types of industries, as you can see here, and it's growing rapidly. And our commitment to innovation and customer success is recognized by the industry. It's a product that gets the highest user ratings and delivers business agility in times of change. And you can expect the software to be easy to use, implement, and maintain as your business scales. And being ranked number one ease of use, customer experience, satisfaction, and usability, it should make you really excited to see Haley's demo. So no pressure.
Thanks so much. So hi, everyone. Like David said, my name's Haley Elliott. I'm a pre-sales solutions consultant here at Revelwood. So I do a lot of our technical demonstrations, that kind of thing. As a little bit of my background, I've been working with Adaptive for about 3 years now and actually started with leading implementation. So I was an implementation consultant for Adaptive for basically every use case you can imagine: operational, financial, sales planning, whatever planning process you can think of, we've built out an Adaptive. So main point there is please feel free to ask whatever questions you have in the chat. I'm not going to get to every single use case we could have in Adaptive in the time we have today, but feel free to ask questions and we'll follow up with them. Anywho, in terms of what we're going to see today, you should see an agenda up on the screen. We're going to start with basics. So getting you acquainted with what the system looks like, how you navigate through it, and some of the key components. Foundational data model is just a fancy way that we talk about the basic building blocks of Adaptive. From there, we're going to move into everyone's favorite topic, scenario analysis, using Adaptive's active dashboard. So I'll kind of talk about how you can start leveraging dashboards as an active part of your planning process. We'll move into the P&L, although do know we do build out full 3 financial statement models. So your balance sheet, cash flow, and P&L. Just going to be focusing on that P&L for today. We'll move into workforce planning and then cap everything off with 2 different types of reporting in Adaptive, ad hoc reporting and board reporting. So just to kind of level set for what we'll see. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Adaptive. So y'all should be able to see my Adaptive screen right now. And like I said, we're going to start with a couple of basics. So there are 2 things you're going to see on every single screen in Adaptive, or just about every screen, and that's going to be your level structure and versions. So your level structure is typically your organizational structures. So think entities, locations, departments. If you are a professional services company, you may choose to have your projects here. So lots of different things you can do with the level structure. The levels are going to be your first line of security in Adaptive. So if you have your department heads coming in, you want them to be accountable for their budgets. So you want them to come in and just directly key in their forecasts. I can assign them to their individual departments. And then every single dashboard report and sheets are our working screens, are going to be automatically filtered to their department. So this is a really big part of the ease of use in Adaptive, is your end users are not having to hunt through a bunch of irrelevant data. They're not going through 10 different templates to find their department's templates, that kind of thing. The level structure is going to help you moderate that. And you can change the level structure at any point after implementation pretty easily. The other feature I mentioned was versions. So you do get an unlimited number of versions in Adaptive. So if you're thinking about those rolling forecasts, that kind of thing, this is a really great place to do it. Your subscription cost does not change with the amount of data you're loading or anything like that. I have a client right now who has 11 terabytes of data in the system. I know I usually get some shocked expressions from that. Probably don't need that much data, but the point is, your subscription in the Adaptive system can handle that type of scalability. You'll notice a couple of these have lock icons at the bottom. That just means that you have a board approved budget, something like that. You want end users to be able to come in and see the data, pull it into reports, maybe copy it into that rolling forecast, but you don't want them to change the data in that specific version. So thinking data integrity. So those are kind of the two foundational data elements. So I'm going to hop into what's happening on the screen here. One thing to note, or I guess two things. The first is that I am in an admin view, so I can see everything in the system, all the levels, all the dashboards, all the dimensions, all the navigation. You are able to trim this down and heavily limit the scope based on each user. So really nice way, again, to make sure people only see what they need to and aren't getting lost. The other point is that this is my home screen when I sign into Adaptive, because I just like visuals and like to see a company summary. Someone else might set this to be company announcements. A user might want to go straight to a budget versus actuals report. Get the idea. There's a lot of flexibility in making sure this is appropriate for everyone who's coming into the system. So let's move on to scenario analysis and dashboards. We call dashboards active and adaptive for a couple of reasons. The first is that you can click on any number you see, and you'll have two options to drill into that data. So a lot of times in reports or dashboards, we're used to them being pretty static, and you have to go track down the Excel file that's actually explaining why a number is what it is. Here, I can just say, hey, explore my revenue and give me some more detail about where it's coming from. That's going to open up my trusty little cell explorer and give me a bunch of information about the levels that make that up, if there's any dimensionality associated. But most importantly, it's going to let me drill back into my input sheet. So I have a direct link to the sheet that's actually generating that number, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But it also has the option to access an audit trail, which is tracking who's making changes to the data, when they're making changes, and what those changes are. So again, when you're bringing more and more people into the budgeting process to introduce that accountability, you want some way to be able to tell who entered that crazy $10 million expense. The other option here is to drill down by dimensions. So again, I have a lot of dimensions in this instance just to showcase that you can have a lot. A lot of my clients will have fewer than this, more than this. So just thinking about what level of detail you want to be able to report on. But anywho, these dimensional drill down paths are automatically generated. And what I mean by that is I don't have to code them in. A lot of other products, you're going to have to decide what order do I want to drill down on or drill down in. In this case, I can say, hey, you know what? I want to look at my revenue breakdown by different product groups. And that's going to go ahead and split that revenue number out for me. If I added a new dimension to the revenue model, it would automatically pop up on that list. And I can keep going down as far as I want. If you're interested in more customer level detail, customer profitability, product profitability, anything like that, this is a really great way to start drilling down into that type of detail. And then you can always explore data as well. The last reason these are called active is that you can bring your sheets directly onto dashboards. So this is just my kind of sales revenue generation dashboard. But if I scroll down, I'm actually going to see my product revenue sheet. So right here, and we're going to make a change. So I'm going to come down and we're going to put on our department one hat. I'm going to pretend I'm the budget manager for this department for most of today. And basically what we want to do is see what happens if we exceed sales by 5% this year. So I want to see what that does to my forecast. Go ahead and apply that adjustment. You see that adjusted all of my unit sales up 5%. From there, I'll go ahead and save it off. And what you're going to see once that saves is an immediate ... kind of refresh of all my dials here. So the reason that is really important to kind of understand is that kind of elastic hypercube technology that David mentioned. Your reports and your data, your sheets are all on one database. So you do not have to worry oh, are everyone's changes reflected in my reports? Do I need to kick everyone out and refresh all of them? No, as soon as I made a change, it went ahead and updated my top line numbers. So really nice way to start to do that type of scenario analysis directly on a dashboard. In terms of actually building these out, it is all drag and drop. So there's no coding in Adaptive. I personally have zero CS background, hate coding, will never learn it. And like I said, I implemented Adaptive, including the integrations. So all you have to do is say, hey, I want to edit this. I want a column graph. And you just tell Adaptive what accounts you want. So what's cool here is that you don't just have access to your financial data and the GL accounts. You also have all of the other forecasted accounts in the system. Again, demo instance, I have a bunch of sheets. This will be a much more limited view for any of y'all, but you just have that ability to mix different data types so that Adaptive does become your single source of truth. You can also schedule these to be sent out to someone's email inbox on an automated cadence. So kind of set it and forget it in terms of the CFO who likes to get this type of visuals in his or her inbox every Monday. But that's dashboards. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and move into our P&L. But first, I do want to walk us through navigation. So again, admin view, you can restrict who has access to what options in this navigation menu. But the point is your entire planning, reporting, and analytics process is in one pane here. So we'll start from the top and go down. Sheets where we are about to go are all of my working screens, your templates where you're integrating data, you're keying in data, and that kind of thing. Your assumptions are going to be drivers. So if you currently have driver-based planning, if that's something you want to move towards, all of your drivers will be housed in an assumption sheet. So when you make a change to one of those drivers, it updates in every kind of calculation it's referenced in. So you're not hard coding numbers. It's a much more dynamic way to do driver-based planning. And I can go into that more when we hit personnel. We'll come back to reports. I am not going into consolidations today, but for those of you who deal with intercompany eliminations and your ERP just isn't great at doing them, Adaptive does have that capability, as well as a process tracker and workflow to manage different users when they come into the system. So making it even easier to navigate so they don't even have to come into the navigation menu. But most importantly, I want to pause on these last two items. So integration, we have a couple of different options for getting data into the system. The first is going to be automated integration. So Adaptive is data agnostic, which means we can connect to literally any source system, and that's not limited to your ERP data, so your GL balances and transactions. We can bring in operational data, your headcount, employee rosters, if you want to bring in invoices, purchase orders, billings, any data point that's relevant for your reporting and planning processes. We can connect directly to the source system, grab that data, and have it automatically loaded. And that can run as quickly as every 15 minutes. It takes maybe a minute or two to actually complete the integration load. Doesn't kick anybody out of the system, and you also won't notice any performance impacts. So it's all happening in our native ETL tool, which is in Adaptive. We do not leverage a third-party integration platform, which is part of where that kind of performance enhancement comes from. Everything about your automated connections are handled in-house in the platform. The other way that you can see here to get data into the system is just a manual import. So grab a CSV file, pop it into Adaptive, pretty easy to get data you don't necessarily need updated every day loaded into the system. And then lastly, you have access to a ton of support. So what other people are doing in the system, Workday does provide 24/7, 365 support to all of its clients. So you'll always have someone to ask for help. And then there's a nice little question mark at the top. It's a context dependent knowledge base that's just going to kind of be your back pocket IT person. You have a question, you want to know how to build a dashboard. since this is meant to be fully owned by finance, you just click on that question mark and Adaptive's going to guess what you need help on. So that's navigation in a nutshell from an admin perspective. So let's go ahead and actually jump into the P&L and take a look at some of the other sheets in Adaptive. So we saw the product revenue sheet, which is one type of sheet in Adaptive. This right here is our P&L. So a couple of things you're going to notice here are green numbers and black numbers. So green numbers are my actuals loaded automatically from my ERP. Black numbers are my plan or budget data. And we'll talk about a couple of different ways that we're generating these forecasts. So again, I'm going to play like I'm the head of department 1, and we'll look at some functionality here. So 2 other things you're going to notice on this sheet are some colorful carrots. So red carrots, like the one you see here, just indicate there's a note. So Adaptive is very much meant to be a collaborative tool. So if someone's coming in and changing a number, they can just right click, add a note, explain why they did it. And all of those notes will aggregate at the bottom of any report that has this account on it, which I'll show an example of. Our blue carrots indicate that it's a calculated field. So formulas in Adaptive are pretty straightforward. We do not have a proprietary coding language. You're not going to have to learn MDX coding or JavaScript or anything like that to be able to put in a formula. So I just clicked on telephone. You can see in pretty plain English, this is telling me I'm taking my FTE account times a telephone per head assumption. Someone was kind enough to even leave me a comment explaining what it's doing. And what you'll hopefully notice is this is pretty similar to Excel syntax. So the main difference, kind of the main shift you have to make mentally, is that you're not taking A2 times B 10,000, which is not telling you anything that's happening in that formula. You're actually taking a named account times a named account. So that's the primary difference. And then if you want to do something more complex, I know that's a simple example, but your if statements, that kind of thing that you probably use in Excel, you can come up to your formula assistant and just point and click at the functions you want to use. Yeah. In terms of just mentioning Excel as well, we do have pretty similar keyboard shortcuts. So if someone is a diehard Excel user, this is just another way to help them feel at home in the system. In terms of how we generate these numbers, though, so obviously I have some calculations directly on the sheet, but you can also come in and say, hey, you know what? I know my budget for new hire training. We're not hiring quite as many people, so I'm going to reduce that down to 10,000 for the year. And what's cool is Adaptive has built-in financial intelligence. So this is out of the box. You do not have to code it in. And it's going to actually give me the option to break that number back seasonally using the actuals I've loaded from last year. So a lot of us have some sort of seasonality to at least 1 or 2 line items in our P&L. So this is a really nice way to just quickly account for that. So I'll go ahead and save that change off, and that will roll up all the way to my top level unless you've introduced some sort of approval process. Cool. So we looked at a calculation on the sheet. We saw manually entering data. The other option here is to have a supporting schedule. So sometimes you want a little more detail on why these line items are what they are without having to have 50 lines under the GL account on your income statement. So here, what I can do is actually say for maybe salary and wages, come in, explore cell. So I can still do that even on a sheet. And I'm going to follow this all the way through to my workforce planning model. So one thing to note before I do click into that sheet is Adaptive has a ton of security around personnel data. Again, I'm in an administrative account, so I can see everyone. But if I don't have salary detail permission, then I will not see the bottom half of the cell explorer. I'll just be able to see the total salary burden for the company or whatever department I have access to. So there is a decent amount of security beyond just the level structure. But I'm going to go ahead and go into the supporting schedule. So what's driving that income statement number? So this is another type of sheet in Adaptive. It's called a model sheet. And this is one of the biggest things that actually separates us out from a lot of the cube-based tools that we're probably used to. And so what you can do here is drag any columns you want onto the sheet. And those are the only intersections that are going to be calculated on that sheet. So it's going to, one, only display information you need, and two, not put an undue kind of burden on the system when you want to have 40 dimensions on your personnel planning sheet, which some of you are probably chuckling. I've had people do it before. So in terms of what's happening here, we have a couple of drop downs, and these are all calling to those assumption sheets I mentioned. So we have some tax rates keyed in for specific states, because we all know California and New York have pretty strict tax rules. So we'll sometimes have location specific assumptions, so I don't have to enter them over and over and over again for every individual. You'll also notice William has two separate lines. It's because he's being allocated across two departments. It could be allocated across projects, R&D, products, any dimension that you need to allocate by. You are able to do that, and this will automatically split his employee burden across these levels in the income statement. In terms of calculations, if I come into row details here, you'll be able to see all of Madeline's employee burden calculations. The one I like to call out is on taxes. So you'll see that Madeline hits her maximum in June for two different taxes. And Adaptive knows, hey, we don't need to calculate this anymore. Go ahead and drop off until the next fiscal year. So this has been a major pain point for a lot of my clients, because it's honestly hard to manage this outside of a system. Adaptive, you just tell it what the maximum is, and it will handle all of this automatically for you. And this does not just apply to personnel. Anything that you have mins and maxes or kind of seasonality or rules around, we can put into the system. One other thing to note is that these accounts are completely configurable. They're just examples. We have a lot in here. You do not have to have the same ones. And a lot of these, your at least basic US taxes, your Social Security, Medicare, all of that will come out of the box with the personnel model. Last point here is, if I've gone ahead and imported my existing employee roster, you can always add on to data that you've integrated in or imported in or keyed in. So in this case, if I want to hire another account executive, I can just copy that row. If I want an entirely different position, I can add another row. Could Control-C, Control-V from Excel. Again, just highlighting that everyone can kind of find their own way that they like to visualize data, that they like to key data in. But that's model sheets in a nutshell. Lots of other cool functionality here in terms of like required columns and all that, but that can be a follow-up. But that's workforce planning. Like I said, though, that was an individual-based sheet. If you do more role-based, so you have high turnover positions and just want to say, hey, we have 5 FTEs in position A, you could do that too. We often have clients do a hybrid. So that's just a taste of modeling. There's a lot more we could go into there, but I'm going to move into reporting. So there are 2 other types of reporting in Adaptive, and I'm going to start in our web-based reports. So web-based reports are going to be more used for your kind of quick ad hoc, I have a really fast question and need to answer it quickly. Or at the end of your budgeting process, you want to kind of do a quick comparison view, something like that. So we'll walk through functionality, and then I'll show you how these are built. One thing to note is anywhere I've shown you a colorful dashboard or report, you can change that to match your company colors. They're the color palette in model management, so no worries there. But in terms of what's happening on the screen, footnotes, if you remember those red carrots on the P&L, all of those are now down here at the bottom. That's personal preference. If you want them on the side, you can do that as well. You'll notice I have a currency. Adaptive will handle currency translation for you. So if you do operate in multiple countries, you can plan in local currency, and Adaptive will go ahead and auto translate that for you into consolidated financial statements. could even report on different currencies. So again, this will be more relevant for those of you who operate outside of the US as well. One other thing you can do here is drill into numbers. So I see maybe a crazy variance like this in my travel and entertainment, and I want to see why are my actuals so much higher. What you can do in Adaptive is drill directly into transactional detail without having to go into your ERP in a separate screen, or wait for accounting to tell you why actuals are so wild. You can add whatever fields you want to your transactions table. So common ones I'll see are project ID, vendor, invoice ID. You could have a link to the actual invoice somewhere if you wanted to. So lots of flexibility there. The other option on reports is to actually drill down on the account. So in this case, if I want to look at salary and wages by something like function, I can pivot this entire report. So Adaptive has every piece of data tagged with different dimensions. You do not have to manually manipulate it to kind of answer the question of where is this data coming from? Why does it look like that? That kind of thing. You can download these as Excel and PDF files as well if you want to distribute them, but your subscription will give you up to 1,000 view-only users. So you can just have people come in here directly. They'll be able to drill down all of that depending on their security permissions. And building these out is also drag and drop, which is going to be a major differentiator for Adaptive as well. If I wanted to do something like bring, I don't know, FTE onto this report for some reason, then I could just drag it on, that kind of thing. So it's pretty straightforward. Yep. Cool. So one other report that I usually like to show is just this what if financial statement and cash impact. And the cool thing here is you can actually stack your financial statements on top of each other. So income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, see if there's any impact from changes you've made in the budget. And then you can actually have all of your financial ratios down here at the bottom as well. So the reason I like to show this is one, stacking those financial statements, and two, just being able to have non-financial data. So not just your GL balances displayed on our report. The other item that I'll finish up on, and then I'll check out some of our questions real quick, is going to be Office Connect. So Office Connect is our plugin to Microsoft Office 365. It's going to connect Adaptive and all the data you have in there directly to Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. This is where a lot of our clients get a lot of value in making those board reporting decks, your PE firm decks, all of that, much, much faster to make. If I highlight linked cells, blue cells are linked directly to Adaptive, which means, again, if I want to know where this number is coming from, explore cell, and Adaptive's Office Connect will take me back into Adaptive to answer that question of where is it from. Green cells are dynamic labels, so they'll auto update anytime I refresh this. But what's cool about Office Connect is if you have certain reports that you already have built in Excel, you like them, you can actually just overlay Office Connect on top of it. You have your adaptive elements over here. We keep the interface consistent, so this should look similar to the web reporting interface. And all I have to do is say, hey, I have this existing report. I want to make a couple of line items dynamic. I have some nice Excel formatting, that kind of thing. Now, to populate those lines, I just need to refresh. You'll see I have a March report right now. Say I want to roll this forward to April. You'll come into Workbook Properties, go ahead and roll the report date forward. Key. And refresh. You're going to see those lines populate and my labels change to April. So I still have my trailing 6 months and some year-to-dates. That did not override my Excel formatting either. So you have a lot more formatting flexibility here. I can still say, hey, I want to do some ad hoc analysis, expand this line out. It's going to show me the line item detail underneath it. Or if you know you want to start generating formatted reports for your departments, your entities, your subsidiaries, you can come up here to repeating reports and just pick how you want to break this report out. So Maybe I want a formatted P&L for 3 different departments. We're about to have a meeting in 5 minutes and I didn't do this. Adaptive, in just a couple of seconds, will generate 3 new tabs at the bottom here for departments 3, 2, 1, and still my total company. And then this does also work for, like I said, PowerPoint and Word as well. It's just as simple as coming in and refreshing. So I do see a couple of questions. One is, does Adaptive allow us to do project modeling where you can save/work on a spreadsheet or dashboard without having it update or have it affect your actuals? Yes, that's what versioning is for. There's also going to be an R2 release, super safe harbor there. That'll give you personal what if versions that you can submit back into the base version when you're ready. But right now, like I said, that's the purpose of unlimited versions. You just have your kind of working version, and then you can kind of make that the default whenever you're ready. So yes. Okie dokie. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to David, and we can follow up on some of the other questions at a later date.
Thanks, Haley. So hopefully everyone saw how powerful, flexible, and especially how easy Adaptive is to use with the simple drag and drop functionality. If you need, we do have plenty of resources that we can make available to you, such as one-on-one demonstrations that speak more to your specific and personalized needs. We can also offer up ROI sessions to quantify the value of the investment, hands-on workshops, and even get your hands on a trial of Adaptive as well. Just let us know really what makes sense for you when we connect in our follow-up meeting, or feel free to reach out to me directly. We're always happy to help you. And we encourage you to take a peek and learn more about Revelwood and our implementation approach by visiting our website at revelwood.com. And while you're there, encourage you to take a peek at our Knowledge Center, where we offer tips and tricks about all the aspects of the planning process, some technical tips on the tool, planning tips about the budgeting process, and some various tips on other business aspects of your FP&A model. And thanks again for attending. As we mentioned earlier, one of my colleagues will be reaching out over the next few days here for a 15-minute follow-up call. Hopefully you can take the time to share your feedback. Let us know how else we can help you out. But thank you so much and have a great rest of your day, everyone.